When we talk of cultural differences, it doesn't necessarily mean between countries or nations. It can also mean within different parts of your own country. For example, India, where you a huge country with different kinds of people, different cultures, depending on whether you're in the north or the south, the east or the west. Now, in today's business world, you are bound to encounter colleagues and clients from different backgrounds, whether it's within your own country or even internationally. And this exposure to other experiences and perspectives can be enriching, but it can also be challenging to work together effectively. I have been fortunate that in my international career, I have worked with colleagues from different countries and different cultures. And while I may not have understood everything at the first go about them, I have learned a lot, and it has helped in enhancing my emotional intelligence. Now, some of the incidents were very simple ones, like when I went to work in Poland, the secretary of my boss, she took me around to Old Town and shopping, and also explained certain things about how the Polish people worked, which made it easier for me to indoctrinate myself to their customs and cultures and not make unintentional faux pas. On the other hand, I also know that language can be a very big barrier, as I learned many years ago when I was on a leadership course, and there were people from other departments of my firm. One of them was a young man from Japan, a very nice person actually, but he did not understand English, and he always had a gadget with him which he used to keep looking at. Now, later on, I discovered that that was a translator gadget, but what happened was at one of the sessions, when we were asked to voice our views on a particular topic, I think the translation went wrong because suddenly this guy stood up and spoke in a very aggressive and angry manner and pointing his finger at me and accusing me of all sorts of things. And I was absolutely stunned. Everybody else in the room also went into deathly silence. And finally, I said to this gentleman that, listen, I appreciate your view, but you cannot get personal, and this is my country. And then I kept quiet. Of course, everybody was shocked afterwards, and nobody actually knew this guy from the tax department. As it turned out, he had been seconded to India to actually look after the Japanese desk. Was at that time a lot of work was being done between India and Japan, and my organization wanted him to learn a bit about our culture. Now, all of this I discovered much later because there was another lady in in that particular international tax department who knew me, and she most probably heard what had happened. So when we got back into the office, she actually came and she told me that, he has a style of talking, he doesn't really understand English, and that gadget that he was looking at was a translator. And I just told her, I said, listen, I have no quarrels with the man, but he somebody better teach him some real English and not, to keep looking at the gadget all the time. Now, this was an extreme case, and while while you may not be able to avoid every kind of a situation, there are certain situations that you can avoid, or at least you can prepare. And the purpose of today's blog post is to guide you and to provide you with some food for thought. So, my first suggestion to you is to always ask questions. You know, if you don't ask questions, you may end up making the kind of mistakes like the Japanese man had made. And in this particular case, we're talking about neutral questions that can actually help you to learn more and give you a chance to have an ongoing conversation. You'd also gain insights and show others that you wish to understand them and wish to work with them. So, again, for example, when I first went to Jamaica to work with KPMG, I happened to have lunch with one of the senior managers. He had invited me home over the weekend, because I was very new at the time. And his wife told me that if you really want to settle in quickly, make sure that you always wish your colleagues a good morning. And she said, write down to the security guard because apparently it was part of the culture of Jamaica to always wish everybody a good morning. And I did that, and I found that it did make a lot of help me to make a lot of friends, and people appreciated it that I was trying to follow a very simple part of their culture by trying to fit in. I'd suggest that you study and learn. Many times, when you go on secondments internationally, the employers do try to help their seconded staff to learn more about their country and their culture. And you don't have to just depend upon the employer. You can also use your own time to study things like foreign languages and other subjects. For example, when I was in Poland, I spent my time learning Polish so that I could at least have some be able to understand what was going on. The same when I was working in Denmark, because even though in both countries they were always willing to be helpful and accommodate me as the foreigner, they appreciated the fact that I was trying to learn at least the basics of their language. And sometimes these basics are so subtle that you wouldn't even realize it. For example, in some countries, you have to be very careful how you address people, even if they're in the room. You must address them by their name. You cannot say a he or a she, simple things. So, understanding the culture that you're working in, understanding their customs, will actually help you to fit in and focus on other important parts of your work. You can also advocate for yourself by letting people how you wish to be treated. And you could also make them feel more comfortable about doing it by telling them. For example, when I was working in Poland again, uh, I found out that in the office it was normal for people to address themselves as Miss and Mr. And, I found that a little awkward because, of course, I was used to addressing my boss as Mr., but, to have your own colleague or your own peer addressing you like that felt a little strange. And I mean, I told them, I said, you can call me Vatsala. I'm fine with that. At the same time, I understood that there was a certain level of formality. So when I went on a secondment to an insurance company, I kept referring to the managing director as Mister until he told me that he preferred to be called by his first name. Of course, he was from Holland and a foreigner and very American and Western in his approach. And so even now, years after I've worked with him, whenever I write to him, even I always address him by his first name. With all the things about culture having been covered, there's one very important thing if you're going to be working in a business with foreigners or with people from other cultures, and that is you must never forget to focus on performance. And it is very reasonable to expect a consistent performance from anyone, yourself or from them. And if you are the one who is dealing with someone from a different culture, it is perfectly normal and natural that you should communicate very clear standards as to what you expect from them. And of course, always be open to having them ask questions and make sure that they also feel comfortable because you never know what is the work culture of other places. For example, in many of the countries that I worked in, people tended to work from 9 to 5, very disciplined. They were very punctual, came in at 9, they left at 5. They didn't work weekends. Overtime was very rare because the company had to pay them the overtime, and of course, the company didn't want them to do that. Whereas in other countries, if you didn't work overtime, you were not going to make it to the next level because it was part of the culture that, oh, this person is putting in the work, putting in the hard work. Different cultures have different ways of doing things. So, having finished with the generals, let's look at some specific situations. The one which comes to mind immediately is the dress code. You must study the wardrobe etiquette for the particular business and consider being flexible about your own company dress code unless it's going against what is normal over there. So, for example, even though I do wear Indian attire, when you're working in a Western country, they may not actually look very favorably on you wearing a sari or if you're Japanese wearing the Japanese dress. In some countries, they're more formal, so you have to wear your suit and tie, even if it's boiling hot outside, like say in a Caribbean country or in a country where In the southern hemisphere, you may still be expected to wear stockings. In other countries, they're more casual. The most formal they will get is that they're wearing a tie, but the rest of the outfit is quite casual. So try to fit in by looking at the dress code. Again, the forms of address. It comes back to what I was saying earlier about how in Poland they were more formal, whereas in other countries, cultures, they're less formal. And basically, in some countries, it is very normal to use the first name of others, whereas in other countries, they may not like it. So, wherever possible, let others decide how they wish to be addressed. You can even ask them that how should I address you? If they say they want to be called by Miss or Mr. or Mrs., respect them. It doesn't matter if in your country that's not the norm. Here we're trying to build bridges between cultural differences so that we can get on with the work and not bother about being misunderstood. And this one is very important, that is scheduling. Now, definitions of punctuality about meetings and work shifts tend to differ from country to country. In some places, they actually do clock in when you come in. In other countries, maybe they're more casual. You may be able to saunter in 10-15 minutes after the office hours have started. But essentially, make sure that you understand the culture of the other country, of the other company, whether you're supposed to be there at the stroke of 9 and leave at the stroke of 5, or whether they're more relaxed about things. And definitely, if you have meetings, make sure that you at least are on time. Maybe others may not, but in your case, make sure that your conduct is always above reproach. Then comes communication, and this is one area where many of us can fall down because there are differences in verbal and non-verbal communication, and it is very challenging. So try to be patient and respectful. One little tip that I can give you, if you're ever caught out, is, and this tip will also help you to build rapport, is to mirror the other person. I mean, do it without mimicking them, but try to see how they actually conduct themselves, and then try to copy it until such time as they also understand you and you understand them. And definitely try to find out more about how they what nuances certain positions and all can have, so that you do not make the mistake of upsetting someone without meaning to. And then here's my secret sauce: you must show emotional intelligence if you really want to bridge cultural differences. That way, you not here we're talking about not only being aware of yourself and your own conduct, but also that of others, and seeing how you can relate to them in situations, and make sure that neither you are misunderstood nor do you misunderstand them. And if this is an area that you want to pursue or look at closer, I do have a resource which you can use, just an easily downloadable one, and that is how to develop emotional intelligence with ease. It's a self-study bundle where you're getting a full ebook covering all different aspects of emotional intelligence. And just to make sure that you do not do a digital download and then let it gather dust, you also get a workbook with this ebook guide. And I've included a whole tip sheet on how to improve your people skills, as well as an infographic on human emotions, so you can make out what people actually mean with their various facial expressions. And with that, I've come to the end of my first blog post for 2021, and I would like to ask you, what are your suggestions for bridging cultural differences in the business world with ease?